Hello, Fiona.
Hello, T.
How are you doing? You're back from IATEFL.
I am. I'm alive. Just.
Excellent. Well, we won't talk more about conferences because we've done the last two episodes about conferences,
Yeah,
and
we've
there's
done
been
quite a lot.
lots of conference chat on LinkedIn and all the other social medias.
Exactly. And I'm
Um,
tired. Not tired of, just tired.
so today we thought we would chat about lesson hooks and kind of starting the lesson, share
Yeah.
some practical ideas for what we do.
Yeah, and we've decided to call them lesson hooks rather than warmers or anything because there's a slightly different concept behind it. It's
Hmm.
about directly about engaging the students rather more than warming.
Well, so I mean, you mentioned just then kind of energy levels
Yeah.
and feeling tired after the conference. So, I mean, how do you use these lesson hooks to kind of manage energy levels in the lesson?
Well, I mean, I teach older teens. So quite often, particularly like on a Monday when they come in at 9 in the morning, 9:15, the energy is very low in the room. And so I always do some kind of little activity to I'd say I'm waking up their English. And that
Hmm.
essentially is what it is. It's not just getting them engaged in the topic for today.
Hmm.
It's actually getting them into the mood or into the zone where they're going to speak English rather than just sort of go, "Ugh." And so that's why I call it hooks. And it's for me, but for me, a lot of teaching teenagers anyway is energy management. So it's bringing the energy up, it's bringing it to the place I need it to be, it's getting the brain into you are going to speak English mode. So yeah, that's my attitude. What about you? Because you're more of the digital, and probably teaching different time of day as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, my Italian teens, I've got one group who I see straight after lunch.
Hmm.
So they are sometimes a little tired, they've been at school
Yeah.
in the morning. Um, and I mean, often, so I can't, you were talking about Monday mornings. So my first lesson with them is on a Tuesday afternoon. And so often my first question is, oh, so how was your weekend? Just because,
Yeah.
as well, they're drifting into the Zoom room. And then I saw a fantastic idea, and I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but when I do the notes, I'll hopefully remember. And it was to give your weekend a score out of 10. So
Oh,
rather
right.
than just kind of, how was it? Because a lot of them they tend to go, oh, it was same old,
Yeah,
played
yeah.
basketball match, hung
What
out
did
with
you do?
friends.
Nothing.
Yeah, and so actually getting them to kind of give it a score, it was really interesting because you could
Mm,
see them kind of go, now, what would make it a six or a seven or an eight sort of thing?
yeah.
It's really lovely. Yeah. So that was one of the ways that I kind of
I
mixed
do because
things
most
up a
students
bit.
often hang out together at weekends. I get them, particularly on a Monday. I mean, I'm talking about Mondays now. Obviously, it's not true the rest of the week, but I'll get them to uh, mingle basically and find out something about each person in the room that they didn't know when they walked into the room. Something about their weekend or their Friday or whatever it is that
Mhm.
something that is new to them. So then they're going out going, okay, I know you did that, and I know you did that. So what else did you do? And it's a bit more. It's got like a specific
Yeah.
task or specific mission. Then you've got the what didn't you do this weekend?
Hmm.
Or find things that your friends did that you would never do or you've never done,
Hmm.
um, or that you'd like to do, or that kind of stuff. Um, but it's about that's so that's Monday rather than just lesson hook. That's Monday morning energy booster.
And I've just had a terrible thought talking about like the ways that we talk about our weekends. It wasn't you that suggested the scoring it out of 10, was it?
No,
When
I don't think so.
we
No,
no, okay.
no,
Just one
you're
of
all
those,
right.
oh crap, did we talk about this in a previous episode? And it was Fiona's idea, and I've just gone, it was an amazing idea.
No, no, I don't think so. No, but it's a good idea though.
Okay, okay.
But
Well,
I
so
also like something you sort of alluded to it there, that if for example somebody says, "Oh, it was a 7," what would it have needed to be a 9 or a 10 kind of
yeah.
thing? Although I'm not sure that all age groups would be able to answer that kind of thing. I'm not
What the
sure. It's,
follow-up about what would make it, or just in general
yeah,
the rating, the
some of
ranking.
them would probably just go, I don't know, you know, like
Yeah, yeah.
more games. I don't know. And then with like primary, I used to teach primary kids at the beginning of the lesson. It was almost the opposite. It was getting the energy down a wee bit because
Mm,
they would have just come from school and they'd be, oh, you know, sort of in the post-school high energy fizzy stage.
yes.
And I would want the focus. So in those cases, it was more about doing the more routine bit of the class, coming into the, answer a question as they come in, or,
Yeah.
what's your favorite color as they come in, and each one answers the question, and then you've got the one writing on the date on the board and the one drawing the weather, and it's a different, it's still energy management, but it's
Mhm.
almost the opposite with primary.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Well, when I say
remember.
primary, I taught sixes and sevens, so,
Yeah, I remember
low
a
primary.
colleague because the school that I used to work at, it was on one of the main squares in the town where, kids were just running around. And I
Yeah,
remember one of my colleagues at the time when it clicked for him, that kind of actually they need settlers. They
they
need
need
to
settling.
come in.
Exactly.
They've been running around, and he was a really high
Yeah,
energy teacher and he loved doing music and songs and games. And he was like,
yeah.
I'm just feeding their energy and it's just getting higher and higher and higher.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I call them hooks rather than warmers, because sometimes I don't want a warmer at the beginning of the class. I want a cooler.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I do think, and adults as well, there's that thing, adults coming in the evening, they've had a long day at work, whatever, and they need that just a little extra push to get them into English mode quickly.
Hmm.
And it's not all just about, oh, this is the room I'm in, therefore it's English. There's a bit more to it than that. So, but I think speaking in particular activities are going to be the main one for me. I think that is the um not shortcut, but the fastest way.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you do any hooks that are not speaking?
No, not really. I mean, I think I've always, I think with the communicative approach as well, we always
Mm,
want to get the students speaking as quickly as possible. And like you say, changing that chip into English.
yeah,
Um, so I think often my lessons have started with a speaking activity, whether that's been kind of questions related to the topic or an image for them to kind of look at and think about.
yeah. I
But,
think
but then,
vocab sometimes it's
sharing what they're thinking. Yeah.
yeah. I think occasionally it's more of a vocabby thing with me, depending on what we're going to be doing. Things like the me grids that we mentioned
Hmm.
before. Or put some strange words on the board and get them to work out what they think are thinking thing. So they're trying to work out a connection, and any connection is valid. Just put some random words. It could be stuff that you did last week, the week before. Um, and then that's if people are arriving at different times more than arriving at the same time. But get them thinking about
Yeah.
how could you connect these words? What could they be
And I think
talking
as
about?
well,
Um,
that's why I do those sorts of things less nowadays, because if you're in the physical classroom, when
mm,
people are drifting in, it's much easier for you to really acknowledge that they're there, like
don't know, have a
really
chat. Yeah,
clearly give them a thumbs up, go over, even
yeah,
if you've got all your instructions on the board and everything. Whereas I feel in the online classroom, which is where I teach now,
mm,
I try to avoid too much of that. Everybody else is already doing this. You just have to kind of slot in, even if a student has
yeah.
arrived late. just because, you still want them to feel like they're welcome in the classroom and you want to acknowledge their presence. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a colleague, and the other thing is I can't remember which one it is. Sorry, guys. Who occasionally does a bit like a speaking but writing, so has it on the board as if it was a WhatsApp conversation, and each student as they come in, they add their little bit, or they can crowd around it, like in my classroom, I've got a flip chart, and then I've got two board, like a double board. They can come in and like little three little groups. They write their conversation as WhatsApps and or fake WhatsApps, but
Mm,
um, as I know, it's a student. I know a colleague. I have a colleague who does that. If he's then going on to do writing skills in the
mm,
lesson, it's the same sort of principle to get your brain into English, but also in the same mode as he's then going to focus on.
hmm
I've never tried that. I don't know how successful it is. Not sure because something like that might also depend a little bit on the classroom culture of each teacher. Because we also are part of the room in a sense.
hmm
It's
hmm
not just the view and the table layout, it's the teacher. We have an aura or a presence or a vibe
hmm
that influences.
Yep.
Um, so maybe that's more his, I think I do remember who it is now, but I think that might be more his vibe, should we say, than mine. I don't know.
But
So,
I think it's interesting to think about that as well
mm,
in terms of kind of who we are as teachers
yeah,
and what we're comfortable doing. And then there's that balance
yeah,
of like, do we as teachers need to step out of our comfort zones in order to do activities that reach students
yeah,
in a different way?
but also, we are. I was going to say we are humans. There's a relationship there. So um, your students, when they walk into the room, they expect you to do a certain kind of thing. Or so if you were to do something that they perceived as being unusual for you, they might find it almost confusing, particularly at the
Yeah.
beginning of a lesson.
Yeah.
That's why I don't know that I would be able to do that as a hook because
Mm,
my students know they're going to come in and we're going to, generally speaking, go, boom, energy. We're going to
mm,
focus. We're going to do this and we're going to let's have a rap or teach each other a tongue twister or sing something. There's a bit of the way that I focus energy is, by bringing the English energy up and then we have a bit of a chat and it's so we're communicating in English right from the start. Whereas this colleague, the one that I think is the one, he's slightly more low key than me anyway. Low
mhm,
key, is that the right word? But you know what I mean? It's got a different persona.
mm.
Um,
Have
I
you
don't know.
have you ever started a lesson with you not in the room? Because I've seen teachers commenting about
Yeah,
about that sort of thing as well, that like purposefully they've left a task on the board.
yeah. Occasionally, yes. Not often, but occasionally. And I'll ask one student to be in charge of it as well.
Hmm
Not the same student every time, obviously, but I'll go in and I'll say, right, I'll be back in 3 minutes. This person's in charge. And anybody who speaks English, who doesn't speak English, you write their name on the board, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And then you go out and I have glass walls, so I can kind of observe and the quiet.
I think that's
But
nice as
yeah.
well to see how they interact and complete tasks without the teacher present.
Yeah, so they'll say at the beginning of the lesson, sometimes you then get a bit of push me, pull you, like I want to be the one in charge from somebody who you didn't nominate. And you can see that
Mm.
some of the students will be pushing back against um, this particular person being left even in charge, just to hand out the activity or to whatever it is, set it up. Or so I don't do it very often. I do it occasionally.
Mhm.
Um, and generally speaking, not with a whole group, but like when there's because we have maybe 15 students in total, but there'll be seven in one group and eight in another. So in the smaller groups, there's less potential for power battles.
Yeah.
It's about knowing your students
Mm,
again, isn't it? It
mhm.
does all come back to the same. It's not so much about us and the activities, it's about our students, our relationship with the students, and the activities that we know that we can ask those students to do that will help it's all very
Yeah.
um not subjective, but bespoke. So as a teacher, you just have a lot of ideas up your sleeve, kind of thing.
Mm.
And when I have done, I don't know if you've done this, but I've taken in, say, a board game and left it on the table and said to them, you've got 10 minutes to see if you can figure out how this game works. And
No.
that's quite a good way of starting a lesson.
Mm.
And you put them into little groups of maybe three, and they stand around, and you can have one board game or two or three. Just things like Pass the Pigs. I don't know if
Hmm.
you know that, or Pass the Pugs. There's a pug version as well. Or, I mean, what else have I got? Boggle.
Hmm.
Boggle is not known internationally. Um, yeah, just I've got a Shakespeare game, and leave it on the table and just sort of give them 10
Yeah, good
minutes
to
to
know.
work out how they think
Hmm.
it should be played and then explain. So that kind of helped that. That's another thing I like doing. That works
Yeah.
well.
But would you do that with it kind of leading on to a specific focus in the lesson, or just as something kind of unrelated to the lesson of the day?
Depends. Because Boggle's a word game, so then you can actually just play it at the end. You just
Hmm.
do it and you say, okay, well, if the lesson goes well, we'll have time to play it at the end.
Ah.
Um, I often use it at the beginning of the course because it's a good way of just uh, sort of establishing what do you think? How about maybe the sort of fairly basic getting somebody's opinion stuff, and it's not complex language.
Mm.
It's,
Mm.
I think maybe, and it's a quick activity. Um, but yeah, no, it would depend on the actual game that I was using.
Mhm.
Or, 6 second do, what's it called? 6 second scribble is another one that's quite good for that. Just give them the cards and
Mm.
see if they can figure out what they would do with those cards. Or yeah, but it's a quick activity. It's just to get them in the zone of what do you think? Maybe, how about, it could be, it might be.
And
So,
with us kind of chatting about starting the lesson, do you share your lesson objectives with your learners? Do you kind of
yeah, Jen,
board them or anything?
I don't really bored them, but occasionally I do. Not so much objectives, but the steps in the lesson.
Hmm.
We're going to do this and this, just a couple of words, and then you tick them as you go down, and
Hmm.
then they know where they are and where we're going and how much more, and if they're getting sidetracked or messing about, you're going, yeah, we still got that to go through, guys. Um, so yes, slightly again depends on the group.
Yeah, because it's something that I used to do when I, again, in the physical classroom, because it was on the board, it was visible throughout
Uh,
the lesson. And I started doing it with the teams when I started teaching them online last year. And with my adults
mm,
as well, with my one-to-one students, it's like, okay, this is what we're planning on doing this lesson. But it
yeah,
kind of felt like it was not a waste of time, but it felt like it was kind of a stage that they didn't necessarily remember going through the lesson.
yeah.
There was nothing for them to kind of be visually ticking it off unless I'd kind of put that slide in and said, oh, we've done that now. So I'm
Yeah.
out of that habit. Yeah.
I think it depends on the lesson, not just on the group. I was just thinking, like, for example, I do lesson on negotiating skills, and that's a full morning.
Hmm.
And then that one, I will say we're going to start with a brainstorm, and then we're doing a text, and then we're doing a true and false, and then there's a summary, and there's this, little, and I'll put that on the board just to kind of keep them focused, and also so that they see that although the schedule that they've been given says negotiating skills. It's not the whole same thing the whole morning. There's different
Yeah.
activities. It's more about showing them there's a variety of
Mm,
stuff coming rather than we have to do all this.
yeah.
Um, whereas some of them, like emergent language type stuff, I won't put very much. I'll say, we're going to do some language in a story or whatever it is. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? It depends what my schedule says I'm doing that day. Um, or if it's a project and we're on the third day of the project, or this sort of, so it entirely depends. And it will also depend on the students a wee bit if they're ones that need a bit of a push to focus.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the short courses are different from the long course.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
many factors to consider.
And the relationship that I have with them, the short courses, I don't have time to develop the same relationships. I am more likely to put the stages on the board, whereas
Hmm.
the ones that are, the relationship is stronger, perhaps the lessons are more organic. Um, Sometimes they've planned the lesson.
No.
I don't know. It's all. I think I'm very pragmatic as a teacher. I'm very flexible. So anything that I do is not going to be rigid, or it's
Hmm.
very unlikely to be rigid. And
Oh, I can't,
I
yeah,
think,
I can't imagine following that very same
hmm,
structure for every lesson. I don't know if I could do it.
yeah, that's where I have a problem a little bit, or used to have a problem with all the lesson plan business when you're training. To an extent, yes, trainers need to see a lesson plan. They need to see aims, so that at least they know the teacher's starting the lesson with an idea of what they're
Mm.
hoping to achieve. But all lesson plans should have space. They need space because the students are part of it.
Yeah,
It can't just be about
yeah,
teaching this grammar point or teaching that bit of vocab or teaching that text or whatever it is. You're not teaching things, you're teaching people. So
absolutely.
it's got to be a load of blank space in your plan for the people.
Although linking that back to kind of
Mm.
lead-ins and starting the lesson, any time that I'm training people for kind of the dip TESOL assessments or things, I'm like, give yourself more time than you expect at the beginning and give yourself a huge chunk of time at the end. Because so often people kind of go, lead in 5 minutes. And I'm like,
Mm.
no,
3 minutes. Yeah, exactly. 1 minute,
you'll never
three
do all
minutes.
that in 5 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
my tea is cold and my tea bag
Mm.
collapsed, which is why it's in a one of
Oh.
these. And I love your support bras. They're
I
fabulous.
know, I love it. This is Gemma Correll. I was using this as a pen pot the other day. I thought, no, I'm going to change. I'm going to use the tatty old mug as a pen pot and start drinking my tea from this one.
Perfect.
Sport bras, yeah. Says, yes,
Yes,
you can do it.
you can. You're awesome. Very
Yeah,
good.
so are you.
Well, that seems like a fabulous note to finish on. So we will be back again next Tuesday with
We
another
will, but
lovely
I'm wearing
conversation.
your colours today. I need to swap back into my colours.
See what fashion fabulousness we come up with next week. Because
Oh,
another facet. See you
back
soon.
of my orange.